Hello, everyone. I'm Kane, an AV professional for 30 years, and I'm currently serving as a VP and CTO at EasyPro. EasyPro, for those of you who aren't aware, is an exclusive distributor of many world-leading brands in China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Joey for inviting me to present here. It's more important now than ever to find any opportunities to communicate more and share knowledge with each other. As you know, due to the COVID pandemic, everyone is working from home. So sharing things online is probably the best way to continue learning. I worked in Canada for 6 years before I came back to Hong Kong in 2010 and spent the past 10 years working here in Hong Kong. Look after technical support throughout the APAC region, but spend most of my time working in China. Right now, most of my efforts are focused towards developing networked audiovisual applications and managing the teams that perform a wide range of tasks, including technical training, support, design, and installations. Today, however, I'd like to share something more general about the differences between AV projects in China and other places in the world. I've come to realize and respect many aspects about AV projects in China when compared to the likes of other AV powerhouses, such as the US, and the APAC region, such as Singapore, Japan, and Hong Kong. I think that's enough preamble. So without further ado, let's start with the first of 5 points I will share today about the differences between China and the rest of the world when it comes to the AV projects. On the fly, in contrast with the planned. The first point here is about a difference in design philosophy. To put simply, a lot of AV projects in China tend to be designed and changed on the fly. As I mentioned before, I've had some experience working in Canada and Hong Kong, and there's certainly much more planning involved before a project is executed compared to China. Apparently, there are some differences between on the fly and the planned, and each style has its own pros and cons. Having a carefully refined plan ensures that all stakeholders involved remain on the same page, regardless of the current stage of the project. The goals of the project remain focused throughout, and it's difficult to get lost during implementation. Of course, this means you may need to spend more time planning or require a more experienced team in order to meet the deadlines, and therefore end up with a higher cost. To ensure that everyone respects the plan, however, there are often many barriers to making updates and changes. Of course, order changes are possible, but it's usually costly, and we can see that there's no culture of change unless it's absolutely necessary. When we were working on an announcement system for the airport, for example, normally we had to nail down the design details a couple of years in advance of the installation. By the time the project goes live, some of the equipment may have already been discontinued or are no longer the best fit for the job. There was a case where too much planning doesn't necessarily lead to better results and may end up costing more due to the inefficiencies, which isn't something you would expected. In China, projects are usually very flexible to changes. With this, the initial plan for the projects are not usually as thorough, and this runs the risk of an inefficient installation process where time and resources are wasted by repeated overrides. It is, however, much easier to course correct and make appropriate substitutions to address changing requirements such that the end result is more customized for the client. Of course, this depends on the team involved. Sometimes many substitutions will create a patched effect on the project where things feel like they aren't as stable as they can be. By the way, the requirement changes of projects in China happens quite frequently and usually at no additional cost to the clients. As such, many companies here are especially highly rated for providing good services to clients. The end users always prefer to work with the integrators who can be really flexible and at the same time not charge them for more money. Result in contrast with the process is my second point. So as you see, another difference is the differences between the goals of the projects. In China, the emphasis is on the result. Oh, I forgot to flip over the slides. So in China, the emphasis is on the result. The clients are simply interested in, does the project fulfill my needs? Elsewhere, though, the process is usually just as important as the outcome, if not more so. Another way to think about this is a differences in focus between the big idea and the small details. The big idea is how well the project performs its intended function, while the small details are the processes that enables the project to perform its intended function. A good analogy for this is a puzzle. Are you more interested in what kind of a picture the puzzle ultimately forms? Or are you more interested in how well the pieces fit together to form that picture? So let me give a more concrete example of this. In China, for example, clients care more about how many wires you had to pull for a project. Elsewhere, clients may be more interested in what kind of wire were pulled and how this wire were pulled and routed. But they even care about how these wire are being managed on the rack. It's more important to those clients to understand the small details and the justifications behind each design decision. After all, you can still recall how many times your system failed was just because of the inappropriate cable management. As you know, in our industry, there are many standards on cable routing and management, perhaps too many. Clients really don't have to pay too much attention to some of the details as long as we respect the rules. We respect the rules. Details are important, but we should try to educate clients to be more aware of the bigger picture. So the advantage of being result-oriented is that the projects can be turned around quicker. The questions of can that do this is a lot easier to answer than how can that do this. As such, the projects in China have shorter timelines and tend to complete faster than other places. The disadvantage, though, is the longevity and the robustness of the project over time, as it may not fit as nicely with the existing infrastructure. One or more missing puzzle pieces won't disturb your overall image too much, but over time, if half the pieces are missing, you can no longer recognize that image. Therefore, as a CTSD holder, I have been pushing this standards in Chinese markets. I've advocated for 4 standards. So firstly, the product standard, which can help quickly to find the equipment fit for a certain project, for a specific client, or for an organization. Secondly, the design standard, which can guarantee the rationality of the entire system, make sure that the whole system will be operating smoothly once it's done. Next one, the TNC standard is a very important standard, which can guarantee the reliability of the system. To elaborate, and system is normally expected to last 5 to 8 years. If we follow these standards, we can minimize unexpected issue during the life cycle of the project. Required document and as-built drawings are also part of this standard. As you know, the many projects, especially in China, don't have good documents, which are very, very important to make troubleshooting easier in the future system maintenance. And finally, the maintenance standard, which can help optimize maintenance and support needs, and hence save costs. Well, if you are interested in more details about this standard, you are more than welcome to discuss this with me after the talk. I personally believe that small details are more important, but must be balanced against the cost. So next one, user-driven in contrast with advanced-driven. We often hear, especially for service industry, that clients comes first. Well, in China, the client comes even before first, if possible. Really, the client is the king. We really tend to push end users onto the pedestal and accommodate to all their requests. When the user asks for a specific recommendation or ask us to design a project to fulfill a specific need, we often try to work with the users to do exactly what they want to achieve. If someone walks in, for example, and asks us for good selling speaker recommendations, we'd immediately pull up a list of good selling speakers and suggest them without hesitation. In other places, the industry is much more advice-driven. In the same situation, if a client walked in and asked for good selling speakers, we'd want to first understand the purpose of these speakers, or in other words, the goals of the user, and then make a judgment call on whether selling speakers are the right choice to begin with. We'd provide advice to client about what we believe is the best course of action instead of directly addressing their request. Advice-driven sales, also known as consultative sales, is very common in the rest of the world. In China, however, this culture is not yet widely praised, and most of the time users dictate the important aspects about a project, and the company is hired to fulfill that request. Fundamentally, this is due to a difference in the culture of communication. Chinese culture really disparages the act of rejecting or saying no to someone, especially to clients. Whereas Western culture promotes more directness and transparency. Over the past 2 years, however, I've really observed a shift in this culture. As you may know, in China, friendship and relationship used to be very important. But with the increasing competition and globalization shrinking the world, the Chinese companies have begun taking on more of an advice role, placing a greater emphasis on newer technology, and are becoming more assertive towards clients, which is probably a good thing. In a user-driven world, the company uses its professional experiences to tailor projects, especially to clients' demand. And hence, the clients owns a large portion of responsibility for the outcome of these projects. In an advanced-driven world, the company proposes a solution that would be best address the client's problem, and in turn owns more responsibility in ensuring that it is what clients were looking for. A very good example is that POC is probably the best way in order to convince either the end users or the consulting companies in Western world. Sometimes for a very large scale of project, the manufacturer may have to set up a mock-up system to prove it's the best fit for this specific project. My personal take on this is that in our industry, it is very important to have an experienced project lead for each project, since there are often very few but very crucial design decisions which can completely change the outcome of the projects. This one, conservative in contrast with innovative. So for my fourth point, I think it's going to be very easy to get the point across. The nature of the projects in China is relatively reserved compared to the rest of the world. There's a basic rule for the AV industry here is that recommending a good product to clients requires you to find at least two alternatives which can fulfill the same purpose as this product. This guarantees the clients with at least three choices in terms of competition, price competition. And they have the flexibility to replace a product without too much impact on the overall project functionality or timeline. With this, it is very easy for client to get the good price on their equipment, as the competition becomes focused around the cost rather than the unique features. It seemed to me that the Chinese clients don't like to be the guinea pigs. So if you wanted to market a brand new product to them, you better prepare a lot of case studies that support effectiveness of your product. For example, you would prepare multiple documents outlining different scenarios where your product would be useful and explain exactly how it would be used. Ideally, you would pull this from real life examples and not just testing in the labs. You can see how this creates an issue since no one wants to dive in first. So this is more conservative approach to project development. It is also the less risky approach to in the sense that projects tend to involve components that are well established and easily interchangeable without unique components that can bring the entire project to the ground if they unexpectedly fail. Companies focus on offering products with the lowest possible price while keeping a high standard of reliability rather than pushing for more expensive high-end products. This is why Chinese companies always prefer to prioritize features over performance when allocating their R&D budgets. Here, we can define features as the selling points that we usually list, which extend the functionality of a product, whereas performance is a set of raw quantitative numbers which provide an indication for the quality of a product. It's very easy for these companies to add a new function to operating systems, for example, creating a remote administration app for the equipment, or improving the raw performance of the device, such as improving the frequency response of the amplifier at a large cost. Yeah, another market, there's a stronger culture around innovation and promoting the differences between products in terms of new features and performance. There are more willing early adopters than in China. And the clients tend to look for more innovative and disruptive solutions, even if it means that no easy fallback is available if this one unique components doesn't end up working as expected. If you can build a brand new product with top performance and function, this gives you a big competitive edge against other products. This allows the company that innovates to sell their equipment for higher prices. In China, these new products will not experience as much interest until more products like it begin appearing, removing some of this incentive for going first to the market. So the last one, upfront cost in contrast with the TCO, the total cost of ownership. So finally, let's talk about the money. Costs are very significant and impactful metric for any project, but there seems to be a difference in the focus on costs between various clients. In China, people tend to focus more on reducing upfront costs. They want to minimize the initial investment required to kickstart a project and place less emphasis on the long-term upkeep costs. Meanwhile, the clients outside of China seem to care more about the total cost of ownership, or TCO. The TCO includes the upfront cost, but also the upkeep over the expected life of the project. Due to this difference in focus, Chinese market, Chinese manufacturers tend to offer equipment and installation services for lower margins, but seek to take on more projects in the future. In general, the lifetime of projects will be shorter in China as clients prefer to replace systems rather than continuously maintaining them. To close off my presentation, there are certainly some differences between AV projects in China and elsewhere, both in terms of mindset and in practical terms. I believe, however, it is important for everyone to understand some of these differences, as China is a very large market in the region and is continuously growing. Understanding what Chinese clients are looking for will prove to be beneficial for most companies in the industry looking to sell products in China. China always the same, like a mystery country to outsiders due to the language and the culture barriers, especially in the AV market. Most AV engineers in China don't speak great English. So the only way for other manufacturers to know about the Chinese market is by learning from their distributors. To mitigate this issue and help close the gap between Western and Eastern markets, I organized a WeChat group called China AV English Corner. If you happen to have a WeChat account, please feel free to contact me by simply scan the QR code or contact me over the LinkedIn. Participating in this English Corner is a good way to exchange information with professionals in and out of China and learn from each other. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and please feel free to contact me if you have any comments or suggestions. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.